growing up in Sioux Falls, you didn't see anything outside of the norm of this sort of conservative life, you know, and like we were talking about earlier, you got married. Your goal is that you grow up, you get married, you find your partner, and you have your kids, and you buy a house and you settle down. This Midwestern dream, and I never really connected with that. You know, my dad said the first time I told him I didn't want kids, I was 4, so I knew that wasn't for me, and so I think getting exposed to a lot of these like East Bay punk bands that came through. So, you know, Cringer and Spit Boy, but Green Day and all these bands that we got to see. I was seeing people from other ethnic and racial groups that weren't in the Midwest and getting to see how they were challenging the status quo and questioning things like how housing was being distributed on the West Coast, stuff that we weren't experiencing here because the cost of living was so good, you know, and still is. I mean, it's next to nothing to live in Sioux Falls compared to the rest of the US. So I think getting that exposure early on helped me just to recognize that there were all these social justice issues that maybe we weren't getting to see in the Midwest, but they existed and they were brought to my eyes because of that scene, I think. But it is, I mean, to some extent, you know, when you grow up as a part of this whole anti-establishment scene, right? How do you figure out what you want to do when you're an adult? Because you live in this mentality that you're not going to grow up, right? And 30 is so old and I'll never be 30 and holy shit, now I'm 42, you know? For me, I probably could have sat around and not done anything and been pretty comfortable in doing local activism work, you know, and steering clear of joining the man or being part, you know, working for the man literally at the state level. For me, I think it was recognizing that there are people that do amazing activism work and they make a difference in that way. There's very few people that I think are comfortable, especially I think communities of color and indigenous people, in being in these state systems that aren't there for us. They weren't built by us, right? They were built by this white supremacist society that we live in. Going into public health and especially taking this job at the Minnesota Department of Health for me was really about not everybody can be in that position. Minnesota is progressive and willing to be challenged by their employees. And so I wanted to come here because if you can work in the systems to help change the systems, I think you should. And I don't think that's something for everybody. And it's not like it's super easy, and it's not like there aren't days where I feel like I'm in an office that is entirely middle to upper middle class white women, mostly working in public health across the state. And it's hard to not get burnt out or feel like, God, it's like I need a white translator to have people in the room hear me. Every time I say something, it's not heard. But if I talk to a colleague and they say something and back me up somehow, then it's enough. But if you can deal with those systems and with those challenges, we need more people in those realms. Because those systems aren't going to be like, hey, activist punk rock kids, come in off the street and talk to us. They're not there. They're not set up to work that way.